Reorganization meeting to order.
Okay, the meeting is called to order for the purpose of reorganization under the appropriate sections of Article 4 of the School Laws of PA as amended. I'll take the roll call. Mr. Bailey?
Here.
Mr. Holtzinger?
Here.
Mr. Keller?
Here.
Mr. Lentz?
Here.
Mr. Malone?
Here.
Mr. Reese?
Here.
Mr. Shelley?
Here.
Mr. Shevlu?
Here.
And Mr. Zepp.
Here.
The floor is open for nominations for temporary president.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Holtzinger for temporary president.
Second. Move to close out. Move to close. Second.
Did such a good job last year.
You realize once you do it, it's every year.
You're on the list now, Rich.
Mr. Holtzinger, I'll turn it over to you.
You have a script.
Same thing. This has to open the floor for nominations.
Same thing as last year, Rich.
Open the floor for the election of president.
I'd like to open the floor for the election of the president.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Malone.
Second.
Move the, be closed.
Second.
Now you have to call for a vote.
All right, can we call for a vote for president?
Yeah, all in favor?
Do we want to?
All in favor, say aye.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed? Carries. Jason Malone.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Mr. Malone.
Thank you.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Lentz for vice president.
Second.
Move nominations be closed.
Second.
Still me.
Yep. Go ahead and ask for
Jason, you can take
Jason.
Okay, I can take it. We have Mr. Lentz. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Now, appointments of representatives. Mrs. Weaver, I'm going to ask you to help me a little bit with this.
Sure.
State legislative liaison. Who is that now?
That is currently Mr. Zepp and Mr. Shelley.
Does anybody want to do that?
Mr. Shelley, do you still want to continue on with that?
Well, Mr. Zepp and I generally do it together. He always promises to drive, but he never shows up. You know, it's wishful thinking, and sometime we're going to do it. Maybe this is the year.
I readily admit that I suck at that position. But what I would tell you is that this is for representative liaison. We don't have to drive anywhere. If we were to drive, I might not make it. But in this capacity, we don't have to be driving anywhere. If we were to do the alternate for York County School of Technology, that would be different. Or for the liaison for, what's the other one, Teresa?
This person would typically go to that annual meeting that is in.
Oh, it's that meeting.
That-
Yeah, sorry,
I
it's the
believe that's-
PSBA delegate for the
PSBA
board.
delegate meeting.
Yes.
So everything I said at this point is wrong, okay? Okay, so.
I wondered where you were going.
All right, so it's my fault. Mr. Shelley's correct. I did not drive the last time.
Just accept the nomination.
Yeah, okay. Call me when we gotta go somewhere.
So the two of you are good for that? Okay.
Nobody else wants to do it.
Do we have to vote on that, Mrs. Weaver?
No, that's an appointment, isn't it?
No, you
Okay,
can
so
just
just
appoint
appoint.
them.
Okay.
You don't have to vote on it.
York Adams Tax Bureau, York County Tax Collection Committee.
So that is currently Mr. Seneft, who is retiring. So my recommendation would be that would be Mrs. Grove, and I would be the alternate.
Okay.
I
That works.
move the recommendation.
Yeah, you can just use your infinite powers.
Okay. All right. That works.
Yep.
Yeah.
York Adams Academy. That's Mr. Zepp, correct?
Correct.
You want to continue with that?
Yeah, I really.
Okay. No, I thought you did. I thought you liked that.
I like
Okay.
that. Doing
You actually do that really well.
that. It's because I don't have to pick up anybody to drive. I can just get in the car and go.
York Learning Center Joint Authority.
Yeah, that's a 5-year appointment. You currently had Mr. Flaharty, and his term expires at the end of this year. That meets basically 4 times a year at 6 p.m. at the York Learning Center. They have been meeting virtually, obviously, the past couple times. Mr. Flaharty has not been able to attend many meetings, so I believe the board would need to appoint a different representative.
And I don't think that position, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Weaver, but that doesn't have to be a board person.
It does not.
Right.
Does not,
Is there
right.
anybody that's passionate about it in the community that has entertained that to this point?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so that's open to the thing.
Do we have any board members that have any interest in that? Mrs. Weaver, if we can't fill it, what happens?
I don't really know. I mean, I don't believe it's anything, really happens. We just wouldn't have representation. We would get the reports quarterly after the meetings, and I can certainly share them with the
Is
board
there something we
members.
need to vote on, that we need representation?
Um,
It's just a reporting thing?
Yeah, I mean, that's very much like the VOTEC authority. So the York Learning Center actually owns that building, which happens to
Oh,
be
wait.
the old Central York
That-
building.
If you're saying that position doesn't matter because I'm on the York County
No, I guess.
Authority there, so
Yeah,
I'm
no,
just
I.
letting you know, that's a very important position.
I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't do the things that, like, it's an authority like that, I guess is what I was trying to say, but they only have that very small building, and they're
Well,
not
they're not approving funds and building
a small amount of funds.
Oh,
Now,
well, okay.
in theory, could they do a building project tomorrow? Yes, they could. They're an
gotcha.
authority. So it could become a position that is doing a lot of things. And maybe the board then would want to add a person if it becomes a position that they're doing things.
What I would recommend is for us to go into the community and delay that for to our next board meeting in January, and see if somebody in the community would like to fill that position, and possibly reach out to Mr. Flaharty. And if nobody wants to do it, we'll revisit that in January if everybody's in agreement.
Yeah, actually, Mrs. Weaver, if you wouldn't mind, can you just send us an email with like a description of exactly what is required for that? And then we can try and reach out and see if we can find somebody to do that.
Yeah, I think it'd be a great community thing for somebody who wants to get active.
Okay, I'll get that out.
Thank you.
All right, there's some representatives. York County School of Technology Authority, Mr. Zepp, that's you. Would you like to continue with that?
That's Dartmouth.
It has here that the authority is you.
Oh, the authority, yeah, that's me.
So, Mr. Malone, those ones actually don't
5 years.
expire till the end of.
Oh, okay.
So they're okay.
Okay,
Unless
so we're
somebody
good there,
would want to
sorry.
change.
Wait, when's mine expire?
5 years.
I mean, even if I leave here, I still got to do it.
Yep.
Yours expires 12/31/21.
Next year.
You got
More
another,
shocking, I've been doing that for 5 years.
yeah, you got another year left.
All right.
All right, so we're good there. We're good with those two. Set meeting dates for the calendar year 2021. We good? Just, Mrs. Weaver, do you have what you have in mind?
So the meeting dates were attached, and I have the meeting dates similar with all the committees. So, Mr. Malone, you may want to make sure that your committee chairs want to remain the same. And then I just want to make a note that I am advertising it at the Eastern York High School Performing Arts Center. I know that we're very hopeful that at some point we'll be back to the admin center, at which time we can always change the location back to the
Okay.
admin center. And then I just want to bring your attention to one other thing. For the budget and finance meetings, I did note that the meeting would be called to order at 5:15 or immediately following the operations committee meeting, so that we wouldn't have to wait if operations gets done, 15 or 20 minutes before the next meeting.
Perfect. Okay, so the board's good with that? I will check. So our committees, We'll go around. Mr. Keller, are you still good with co-curricular and operations?
Co-curricular, if somebody else wants to do operations, I can gladly give it up.
No, that's
No.
good point.
I don't want to do that, I do enough stuff.
Any, Jim shaking his head no. Bailey, Holtzinger? Mr. Shelley, do you have any interest in it?
No, I don't mind in town.
Okay. Anybody, I mean, you guys have any
Are
interest?
you really looking to give it up, Mark?
I don't put the effort into it that I should. I feel bad because of time.
Very good, John.
I mean,
John wants to do
the way
it.
I want to.
I'll step up if you want.
Okay, all right. John, so Mark, you're gonna stay co-curricular though, correct? So Mark's gonna stay co-curricular, John is gonna, take over operations, and John, you're gonna do budget and finance?
Right, they meet right together anyway, I'm there
Yeah.
anyway, so.
Yeah, and we're really all there, so. Jim, are you good with policy? Okay. Mrs. Weaver, are there any that I'm missing?
Nope, I think you got it all.
Okay,
You do need to have a motion to approve those, though.
okay. We have a motion and a second to approve those committee?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it passed.
I just have to ask, I did miss who the first was on that. Thank you.
Mr. Zapp. Okay. We have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, meeting's adjourned. Okay, I'd like to call the regular board meeting to order. If everybody would please rise for a moment of silence, followed by the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Weaver, roll call.
Mr. Bailey?
Here.
Mr. Holtzinger?
Here.
Mr. Keller? Mr. Lenz? Mr. Malone?
Here?
Mr. Reese?
Here,
Mr. Shelley?
Here,
Mr. Chevlew?
Here.
And Mr. Zapp?
Here.
We have approval of the previous board minutes.
Motion.
Second.
Any questions or comments on previous board minutes? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, approved. Treasurer's report, Mr. Chevalier.
Yep, in your agenda manager, you'll find copies of the general fund statements and the student activity and food service fund statements. I assume the audit is further down on the agenda this week?
Yes, that is from,
Okay, that's fine. Then that's my report, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion and a second for the treasurer's report.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Educational presentation, Dr. Becker.
Yes, first we have Dr. Timothy Mitzel, Eastern New York High School principal. He's here with Mr. Scott Barr and a few students to talk about a course that they are providing, this video productions course. It's also a course that's being renamed and it's on the agenda for your approval for the EPG for next year. Dr. Mitzel?
Thank you, Dr. Becker. I appreciate your time, board. Thank you for this opportunity to share. I get an opportunity to share a little bit, so I'm going to share through a story. And this actually took place, I put it on social media. As you know, our athletic events have been live streamed throughout our community because of different restrictions and guidelines that we've had. So the very first event that we had this school year was our Friday night football game here against New Oxford. And that night, Mr. Barr was kind enough to show up and be the videographer for that event. Well, during that event, and at halftime, as the band performed and he could place the video camera in a stationary location, he came down and we started speaking, and he shared with me, he said, you know, Dr. Mitchell, this is a really great opportunity for us to maybe do something for students. I said, tell me more. And he explained that he thought we could probably set up, with the equipment that we had, a couple different cameras in the area, in the stadium, and really do almost a television type quality event for the viewers in the community. I said, okay, so tell me a little bit more. He said, well, we need one piece of equipment. I said, let me guess, it's probably like $10,000 that we need. He said, no, it's really reasonable, just a few $100s, we can get it. And I said, okay, so we did. And what came from this is Mr. Barr's video productions class, he was able to procure about 4 students to come along. And this experiment started around 6:15 on Friday, October 23rd, where we showcased our homecoming king and queen. We broadcast it to the community. It was placed out on social media for people to click and follow and join. And it was viewed by over 800 people in our community that evening. What it did was it provided our students with an opportunity to communicate to each other by headsets. It allowed our students to be able to direct and choose which camera angles were being provided. And it was really a great event for the night for our students. Starting at 6 o'clock and ending in the evening around 9:30, they really put a lot of work in. So what I'm going to do before I call them up to talk about their experience is provide you with a little trailer of what Mr. Barr actually put together, some clips from that night and from that event. So, here we go, please enjoy.
On game time at the Eastern North High School.
Let's try that again. Here we go.
We got a little bit of rain coming down.
Always the best music here on game time.
I think another hour.
Would you like to hear your message on game time at the Eastern North High School?
So as you're watching, this is actual footage that was streamed live during the event for our families or community, anyone with the link to be able to watch.
Bring up third down, about 3 yards to go. Nighttime and just wait for daytime. First down, night. So, Lincoln Turner, slings it in there. Looks like Price gets enough for our third touchdown. All right, we have good up on the board. Hey, strong God, and Lord forever.
So, guys, why don't you come on up if you can. Mr. Barr and the students that presented, which were Troy Sollenberger, Mia Schramm, Drew Dellinger, and Lauren Briel, had a really great opportunity to be able to showcase this. So what I thought is I'd give Mr. Barr and the students a chance to answer any questions, tell a little bit about what they learned and what they understood and how they experienced the event. So guys, come on over here. So we can kind of get over here. And what are some of the things that you thought about that you learned maybe from the event or what happened? Or one of the first things you guys told me was about how much work was involved. So tell us about the work that was involved in getting it set up.
Yeah, I think we all noticed that doing this on a grand scheme in like an NFL game or MLB game is very difficult. I mean, we did the high school game with 3 cameras, and I mean, we kind of set up in a week. And I just want to really give all of us a perspective of like, holy crap, it's really hard. It was hard, but fun, and I think we all really enjoyed it. It kind of opened our eyes to like, hey, this is something we can all do later in our life. So, I don't know, you guys add to that too.
So what Drew was saying about we started all week, well, Mr. Barr, by then there was, I guess when our parents were kids, there's football games, miniature football game, but it moves around with magnets. And so what we did with that is we set up 3 different cameras, you know, like 5 deep from each other, but we aimed the ball down, and then just got the chance for the record to get used to flipping through the switches through the cameras and screens, and going through each individual shot. And then when you're on the main shot, you're also flipping through all the B-roll and stuff.
So I think overall, like if you look at it from like a student perspective, I would think that a lot of people are going to be really interested in this. It's something that like not a lot of people get to do. Like I was really blessed. I was like, hey, I haven't gotten to see a whole football game my senior year. Why not? And I was like, my dad's really big into photography, and so I was like, I'll give it a shot. I'm going to be able to see a football game behind the scenes, and I'm going to create something for the community. So like, there's nothing better. I like it.
So there was 3 cameras, right?
Yeah.
So when you flip back and forth from each camera, was there a 4th person that picked which camera that had to go through, or how'd that work?
Yeah.
So basically, I was behind the scenes in press box, and we all had headsets on, which really was a big and important thing because we were able to communicate 3 different angles, one in the field, one in the stands, and one up in the press box outside the door. So it wasn't necessarily somewhere where I could just say, hey, you're next, you're live. The headsets, we were able to communicate, talk, say who's live,
you were saying something.
That didn't come from us.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't need a mic to hear it either.
Just for, if you could just kind of explain how this came to be, where it was, we know the story, but just anything else that you want to share about this process and what it was like getting these kids to work together.
Well, of course, we've been making videos for years in the communication class. But just with everything changing and everything streaming, it just looked like a new opportunity to expand into an additional area. And when you watch something like that, it just adds so much for the viewer to add more camera shots. Because when you have a single camera, you're really very limited in what you can do. But then you have to have somebody controlling it. So, and also when you're live, there's a tension that's realistic and a good experience for the kids to have that. I thought they did a great job for not doing it before. They said it was kind of put together pretty quickly. But have any of you, when you were kids, had that little vibrating football game?
Yeah.
Yep. I brought that in from home, and that's what he was talking about. They had a practice ball. So I could explain to them how to compose the shots. We were doing it on that little Steelers and Rams plastic. So, yeah, we practiced, and as Lauren said, the communication is key. That is something the school just bought just last year, so it was nice we already had that. Because you have to be able to talk to each other. Now, I had a headset too, and I was listening to them and also talking, but rarely. I was pretty proud of them, how serious they took it. I wish I had audio to play you of the four of them yammering. That was like a video. I mean, it was just like, camera 2 ready, go camera 2, camera 3, I like what you're doing there, camera 3, we're coming to you next, go camera 3. Camera 4, why don't you get a shot of this, I mean, they're just talking constantly the whole time, to get good shots, and that's what I wanted them to do. So, in the future, we can either add a 4th camera, or more likely, as you're going to be seeing a class, I'd like to add, we're going to hopefully do more of this. The 4th input becomes what in the business they call packages, where you have like pre-recorded stuff on a laptop, and then just play a little highlight on the run back or something like that. And that's the kind of thing that we hope to produce more of in the future. So, but yeah, they did a great job. Mia couldn't be here tonight; she had to work. And they rotated through the positions, so they all got to do each job at least a little bit. So
We're all very proud of what they've done and what they've accomplished with this. This first event, it's the very first time they had no practice or dry run or anything like that. So this was practice, dry run, everything all together, showtime all together. And I think Mr. Bard was feeling okay about where everything went that evening. And I think the next day or so, he got some word from a community member that said, I've got to tell you, that was the best showing of any York County event all season. By far, hands down, that was the best. So he felt a lot better after that, after he heard that.
yeah, I was like, I'm thinking, I was like, oh, man, that's but for the first time, they did good. But I was like, I'm being a perfectionist about it.
Well, you know our expectation now is that all events have been done. That's right.
Mr. Laura and I actually talked about that. And we know and realize that the students' time and different things go on. But we do want to try to at least do one live event for any upcoming seasons that we have in different pieces and parts when we can do this. I know he's working with several teachers to try to figure out what events and what things we are going to be able to live stream in this same kind of event. So,
That's awesome.
any other questions or anything about what we
I just want to tell you, you guys did a great job, and you knocked it out of the park. I mean, awesome job. Great job.
The thing I would say is I was looking for is to have like a reporter type person on top of that. Next one, an Eastern York student that could actually not only do that, but also maybe a play-by-play or an interview or with the football
coach.
players, the coach.
Jeff, I can tell you, I recruited really hard to get me and Shamam to be able to do that for some events, but she had to decline that, and when she showed up that night, I said, see me out, I told you I'd get you here.
I got a quick
I
question.
just have one, oh, go ahead.
What was the part that you were lacking that you needed to complete it? You said at the beginning here.
Oh, it was a mixer board, a
Okay.
board that would put everything together. Basically, Mr. Barr, why don't you explain?
This is called a video switcher. Basically, it's the device that allows you to see what 4 inputs are doing at the same time. It's called multi-view. So it's not a regular switcher. It brings all the feeds into it. And then you can see in the one shot briefly, Dia was directing on the screen. She's looking at all, what everybody's doing, and then telling the camera people which one I'm going to. And the director's making the decisions as to what goes live, and one of the screens is live. So the device that allows you to do that was the key missing piece that we now have.
That's pretty big. Yeah. $600. That's what I said, well, for $600, you got it.
Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, you can really build on that whole initiative. I can see that going to the next level.
Absolutely. We could even have guest commentators.
Yeah, you could.
Dr. Becker, any other question?
I think that's really clear, and it looks even better than when I watched it on my tablet. Mr. Barr, this question's for you, and I didn't ask you beforehand, so I apologize if I put you on the spot, but I don't think that I can put you on the spot with this question. So as you transition from the video productions course into, I know it's name only, but some other exciting things too with the communication piece, do you anticipate that, you know, in the future that you would be able to identify some industry recognized credentials that they might be able to earn by taking this or an advanced course, or maybe job shadowing or internships or apprenticeships or anything like that? Have you thought about that yet?
I have some, and the some of the credentials I've looked into, you have to, some of them you have to pay for.
Yes.
Which is a attractive to it. But I can continue to look more, but some that I found out more of it. But certainly, yes, there's, as we move on, we can look at internships. I have done some work, a little bit with the community in this area, but it's really just the field trips. Like in the past, I've taken classes at Fox 43 Studio. There's a company in Lancaster that shoots commercials professionally. And we've gone over there, so we pretty much just visited places before. And one thing I want to clarify, the class I have now, which Troy drew a mirror in, Lauren actually stepped up and helped. She's in my class, but actually not until next spring. That class I'm renaming to communications just because it better represents the curriculum. I think of it as it's a communications class where video is the medium in which we use to help the students understand how to communicate a message more effectively. Okay? The class where I'd like to focus on this is actually a new class that's shorter, 90, and it'll focus on the live stream element. Honestly, the class I have now, the curriculum's jammed full, and I don't really have room for it. And this kind of thing works well with the 9 week, because you can teach the kids how to do it, and then another group gets to learn quicker. So there's actually a little bit of communications part of that. So just to clarify.
Very exciting. Thank you.
Yes.
I was just gonna say, like, I think a lot of students would really enjoy the idea of this class, because the whole reason I took your class, maybe because I was like, I can make videos, I can make kind of like my own idea, I can put my own spin on it. And I think students would be really inclined to get involved with it, because it's more than just, I'm gonna go to school, I'm gonna go to my 4 o'clock today, and I'm gonna learn about this guy that created
really impressive.
Thank you, guys.
So, usually, beginning in September, every month, September, October, November, December, I share information with you about, how our schools and our district by group are performing. And I talk about assessments, then I also talk about growth, student growth and achievement. So, but you didn't hear much of that this year because we didn't take the usual assessments that by which we are compared. And so you just have this very brief presentation tonight, and almost all of it is the same as what you've seen last year because the state itself used the 2019 assessment scores when determining how we compare with other districts in the state this year. So first, just a bit about our district. You could read that on your own, but what happened again this year in 2020 is that our high school was once again recognized as by U.S. News as one of the best high schools. And you've seen this before. This is the most recent data because it goes back a couple years, but this information here really has not changed much at all over the last couple of years. So this is a comparison between Eastern New York School District and schools of similar economic status. That's in that first row. So what you can see is that there are 142 other schools, school districts in the state of Pennsylvania that are also somewhere between 40 and 50% free and reduced lunch. We, as you can see, are at 46%, and then you can see that we are also, when we're compared with schools with similar economic status, we're pretty much the same for gifted, 3%, students with English language proficiency, that is, we're just slightly lower for that because we don't have as many students. And our special ed, the number of students who are identified as being in the special ed population is less than people of similar economic status, also less than the state. And then you could take a look at by race as well. None of that has really changed significantly over the last 10 years. We pretty much stayed the same in that area. So then as you go down to the next couple of columns, that's us in comparison with York County. And so York County is somewhere around 41% free and reduced lunch. We're at 46%. As you go down the LIU footprint, so there's 3 different counties that are part of that, and you can see where we are with that too. And also statewide. So we're just slightly above the percentage of students who are in free and reduced lunch than each of those areas. And then, as you know, the Future Ready PA Index, it's color-coded. And so what's most important isn't necessarily that percentage, because it's difficult to compare that, between 0 and 100%. What you really want to take a look at is where we are regarding the state. Like, are we where we're expected to be? The standard that they provide, are we there or above that? And then also, how do we compare then with other districts within the state for proficiency? So this specifically is in English language arts, and so it's still the same. This is not based off of assessments that we took in the spring because we were in school closure and we didn't take those assessments. Nevertheless, they still used these scores in order to provide us with what was posted in October for the community to see. These are the numbers that they still use, so I'm sharing those with you again. So you can see here over on the left, that is the academic growth. So what they do is they take a look and they compare groups of kids to see whether or not are they growing at more than a year's rate from year to year. And so you can see the 3 elementary buildings at the bottom and the middle school and the high school, and you can see that whether or not we met those growth expectations. And you can see we're all in the green and the blue there for that. And then over on the right is like what was the proficiency, like at what level were they either proficient and or advanced. And again, in comparison with what the state expects, we're all in the green or blue. Then here's for mathematics, and you know about this as well, we talked about this last year. So you can see where we are with the academic growth and where we are with the proficiency. And remember, that was the only place where we were red, but look back over here and you can see though for growth, we were at 93%. So the expectation for where we ought to grow for those grade levels at the middle school, we far exceeded those at 93%. And we still were at number 1 in York County in regards to that proficiency score of 47.2. Middle school math is low across the state. So, but we still perform above average. So, and then here we are for science and biology. You can just eyeball that quickly and you can see we're all in the blue and the green. And then this right here, these, something else that they take a look at is something called a school performance profile. And when you take a look at our high school, over to the right, if you want to take a look at that first, you can see that out of all of the school districts in York County, you can see that we were number 1. And you can see it's pretty significantly above Spring Grove, where they were, this at least for this year, for that year. And then over to the left, out of, is it 5? I forget how many high schools there are in Pennsylvania. I had that written somewhere. I think 570 or so, but we were at number 14 in the state. And so all very impressive. We really have come a long way. We still, you know, I just wanted to put this in everybody's minds, as much as we've been struggling with what everybody across the nation has been struggling with, you know, providing quality education to our students when, you know, we've got 15 kids at any time going in and out of remote and, you know, back into a classroom and trying to keep up that way. Everybody is experiencing that, just not just us, but I just want you to have it in the back of your mind. Our teachers and our students know how to do the work and they know how to perform, and we will get through this. And so this is the area here where we're not as happy as the way in which we compare, and this is the work that we've been doing for the past couple of years. So we've shown you several presentations so far about what we want to do with providing more opportunities for our students to have industry-based learning opportunities. So, and then also, you know, we'd like to be able to offer more rigorous courses of study. What's difficult about that is when you're in a very small school district, you don't have as many opportunities to offer additional courses. You don't have the personnel nor the kids to take all of them. So, you know, that kind of puts us at a little bit of a disadvantage for that. But it's still, nonetheless, is our goal to offer more rigorous courses of study as well. So that's where we are. None of that information is new to you, but it is a reminder as to how we perform within the district, in the county, and across the state. And so if there are no more questions, then Dr. Mancuso is up.
Dr. Becker?
Yes.
On industry-based learning, is there anything we can do as a board to help support that initiative for gold collar, blue collar type working class for the industries in our district, and to be able to partner with them and maybe to go outside of our district to be able to get some opportunity, all that jazz. Is there anything we can do to support anything in that box there?
Yeah, there are many things that could be done, and that's, you know, part of the goals that we had actually started last year to put some things into place in the spring, and then of course we had school closure. And so, you know, we're working through some of that again, but a lot of that is involved in not just community planning with Dr. Mitzel, but also in his budget planning to budget for some of these opportunities for kids. And there are a lot of things that are involved. And so I won't share all those details with you right now, but we'll bring that to you in the spring.
Yeah, I'd really be interested to see what your initiatives are for that area.
Is that
when
good?
the time comes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
And definitely an area for growth, and it's been our major focus for the last couple of years.
Yeah, there's some emerging markets out there, given the sign of times and things.
Yes.
So if we could move, you know, if we could stay abreast of those things as a district and, you know, provide those opportunities when when this pandemic starts to loosen up, that would be exciting.
Yeah, I know that there would have been more work-based learning experiences if kids were able to get out.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Turn a little bit this way so I can speak to the board. Good evening, everyone. Thank you again for the opportunity to come before you this evening and have another conversation about our path forward. We changed our path November 10th, and we brought our students back in person for the middle school and high school. December 1st, we brought our elementary students that wanted to change their mode of instruction and come back to in-person. Since that time, school districts in the state have been facing additional challenges to maintain that level of education for in-person instruction. And tonight, I would like to talk to you a little bit about those challenges, as well as the great things that we have continued to do in the Eastern New York School District as we work and provide a quality education during the pandemic. So as you know, the governor had put out new orders that required the superintendent and the school board president to sign an attestation form that we attested to that we were going to follow the universal masking mandate, and that we were going to also then follow the recommendations for cases based on COVID within your school district. So I bring to your attention, December 4th marked the 4th consecutive week that your county has been in substantial. I have no reason to believe that by the end of tomorrow, your county will be in its 5th week in substantial spread, and that's why we were required to sign the attestation form that we were going to follow those mitigation strategies, and we were going to stay open for in-person instruction. As you know, over the last 2 weeks, 2 of our elementary schools had to close due to meeting the threshold of the number of cases that were present in their building. And so you can see here the 14-day rolling period, 2 to 4 students. All 3 of our elementary schools fall within this category. So in the substantial spread that we were dealing with, those were the options 1 and 2 that we pursue when we reach the threshold cases. So Wrightsville and Crites Creek, during that rolling 14-day period, had the number of cases that we took a pause for 3 days and tried to figure out all the contact tracing that's associated with it, further disinfect all the spaces, even though that is occurring every single evening within our classrooms, and then return back to instruction. During that time, we went to a full remote learning environment. One of the things that became advantageous to us is that our Chromebooks were delivered that we had been waiting for right on time. So we were able to distribute our new Chromebooks to our kindergarten through 2nd grade. And so now, across the district, we have a full implemented one-to-one device program for all of our students. I believe today, Wrightsville received their Chromebooks, and so therefore, that now allows us to do any type of transition back and forth that we may have to do based on that. The other 2 buildings fall into the higher category between the medium 500, 900 students, and you see there that, oops, excuse me. For some reason, we're not on the right way here. There we go.
high school, 1 to 3 students, cases were able to stay open. However, we should consider altering our schedule significantly to decrease the number of students. If we would choose that type of option, that would mean that we would potentially look to going back to some type of blended remote option where our students would be on an A and B schedule. 4 to 6 students, we would follow the same protocol. If we get 7+ students, then we're in a more serious spread within our own building, and we need to look at closing school for 14 days in order to get people spaced out away from one another and see what type of community spread we may have within a building. The state every week puts out an early warning monitoring dashboard, and I follow this on a very consistent basis because that tells us specifically, as you see here, we can drill it down to the county level. So this is actually York County data that was updated on 12/4. There'll be a new update then that will come out next Monday as well. So you can see that the newly reported confirmed cases from the previous 7 days to the most recent 7 days was a 381 case increase. The incident rate per 100,000 went from 327 to 412, or 85 new incidents. Percent positivity rate, that's the number of positive tests divided by the total number of tests given. The previous 7 days was 12.1, 14 moved to 14.8. As you hear, epidemiologists, people associated with tracking this, when it gets above 5%, there is a concern that people need to begin to look at different mitigating strategies to deal with that. Then we take a look at the average hospitalizations, ventilators, and hospital emergency visits. A lot of those things don't directly pertain to our school district, but we can see there, as community spread is taking place in a substantial level, we're seeing an increase in all of those areas as well. And to go back for your perspective, a little historical perspective, that March 17th, York County had its first 2 cases. At the end of March 2020, the percent positivity rate was 11.5. And as I just indicated to you, it was 14.8. So today, we are seeing a higher positive percentage rate than when this pandemic first broke out. Now, there have been other breakthroughs that you're hearing all about the vaccine and new treatments that are helping along the way. However, we're not there yet. So as we are working to get there, what do we have to do to make sure that we're providing a quality education as well as keeping our students and staff safe? The average case count in York County on March 31st was 9.6. On December 8th, it has now increased to 448 cases on average. The next chart here is a little difficult to see. It's just a comparison of where we are for COVID-19 positivity. Right here is Franklin County. York County is second behind it for the local trends for positivity. As you can see, it was beginning to flatten, and now we've seen the surge again of all the counties in our area on a sharp increase for the local trends of positivity. As you know, I pay close attention to what's happening within our zip codes around our school district. I have attempted to speak to some people to try to get down to only the towns that make up our school district. However, I am not able to ascertain that data yet at this point, so I have to stay within the zip codes. And so I pay attention at 17366 Windsor, 368 is Wrightsville, and 406 has Pelham, but there are a lot of other towns and cities that are located within Windsor and Pelham that make it difficult to really truly drill down to what's happening at our local level. But this is the only data that I can track that helps me see what's happening across the board in our community. So as you can see, I've been tracking this all the way back since October 8th. However, at that particular time, we were around 7%. As you can see, at the local level, we've seen an increase all the way up till the 26th to today. The numbers are that 14.7 for the 366 zip code, 13.5 for 368, and 15.3 for 406. If you're looking at the data at the local level, we've seen a surge in a week's time at this zip code level, 10.6 to 13.5, and that's our Wrightsville area.
And that's it, and that percentage is a percentage on everyone that was tested who was positive with the...
That's 218 positives out of 1,611 tests, Mr. Zepp.
I want to make sure I was reading that.
And so there, as you see, last week we were very close to what the York County average percent positivity is, and today we're almost mirroring exactly what's happening in York County as far as the percent of positivity rate within this zip code area. So let's further get down to the school district data. So for the last 2 weeks, upon return from the Thanksgiving break, I have been paying attention to the positive cases and the number of quarantines that are now resulting because of those cases. What I will tell you is that we are beginning to see a lot of positive cases happening within households, to our parents, to both parents. And as a result, we are seeing students having to quarantine as a result of that because they are close contacts to that household. As you know, previously, prior to CDC putting out new guidelines, that was a 24-day quarantine when you had a close contact in a household. That was 10 days that the student had to quarantine until that person in their household went through their infectious period, and then they had to do another 14 days to see if they actually became symptomatic and would have tested positive or become infectious for coronavirus. So as you can see, the numbers there for the first week, the numbers were low. However, Wrightsville, as you see, was at that threshold that we needed to close. I could see before we returned from the holiday break that Wrightsville was going to need to not return because we saw the increase in positivity. The other thing that happens now in the 14-day rolling count is we only count cases that are in school during their infectious period. If a student was had tested positive over the break and was not in school during their infectious period, that does not count as a case to the rolling 14-day calendar that began December 1st. This week's data, as you can see, Canadockley is holding at 0. Craig's Creek reached 4. We had those 3 positives in 2 days take place, and as a result, we reached that threshold and needed to close that school. Wrightsville, as you see, went back to 0. Anytime we close a school, and then when we reopen, the case count resets itself. So if we would have any cases now that a student or a staff member at Wrightsville would become symptomatic, say tomorrow, that would start the clock for a new 14-day rolling day calendar. The middle school was at 2. Actually, the high school should be for 2 instead of 1 at that particular point, so I apologize for that. One at the high school will be coming off on Monday in the rolling 14-day calendar, so we'll be back to one case at the high school that would be in the rolling day calendar. However, if you are looking for comparison, you can see the total number of increase of students currently quarantined. And those numbers, before I came up, this was actually posted. Actually, Wrightsville is now at 20 students quarantining. The middle school is actually at 89, and the high school had rolled down to 68. So you can see one of the disadvantages when you're in person and we have more students, when we get a positive case, we're seeing more close contacts. The other thing that happened at the middle school, we did also have to quarantine our junior high girls basketball team as a result of a positive case from another school when we scrimmaged them. Also at the high school, we had to quarantine our boys varsity basketball team because we had a positive case there. So right there off the bat, 24, 25 students. And one of the things that we're concerned about is that number in particular. Of course, we're concerned about any positive cases that are taking place within our school confines. However, with that positive case, if a student rides the bus, and then the one good thing that's happening within our buildings, though, is because we have our students potted and in assigned seats, it's a smaller amount there. And in the cafeteria, the same way. But if they then move into being an athlete, it's now affecting more students based on that. So as of today, we've had 40 total positive cases since we've opened school September 8th.
Dr. Mancuso, has anybody ever, have you heard of anybody being hospitalized or just staying home and working through it like a cold? Has anybody had any ongoing effects, or has it been to the next level of anybody that's been found positive?
We are currently concerned, Mr. Zepp, about one employee's spouse.
Thank you.
And that's the one that's been reported to us. There may be others that have been hospitalized, but that may not have been reported to us.
Right, if they're not digging for it. I was just curious. I'm
correct.
Concerned about the health of the staff and students. That's all. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, one of the things that I wanted to bring forward to you as I think about what my role is and what my responsibility is to you, to our students, to our staff, to our community, I bring forward some of my thoughts based on where we're at and the challenges I see coming. The first thing is, since September 8th and prior to that, I had the deepest appreciation for our staff, students, our school board, and our community. They have been patient with us as we have stood here 3 or 4 times, and we have gone through data, and we've talked about what we think is best for our students, and we made a decision, and once we made that decision, we moved forward with that, and everybody, to the best of their ability, has been carrying out what their task has been and what their role is within this school district. They've given us grace, they've given us flexibility along the way to get things done with what we need to do. And so for that, I'm super appreciative and I am thankful for that. Our other commitment that has allowed us to stay open and stay in person has been our commitment to our safety protocols of masking, of distancing to the extent possible, of washing hands, of doing the other cleaning and disinfecting that's been required of us. We have been successful. We've used in-person, we've used hybrid, we've used remote learning, and we've had to quarantine at grade level, we've had to close a few schools. That's what we committed to, is that we were committed to providing the best option for our parents that they were comfortable with, and we have and will still continue to meet that. So our goals are, number one, our goal is to keep students and staff safe and everybody in our community to the best of our ability. Through the mitigation strategies, we're trying to curb the spread of the virus currently, as you see, based on the numbers that we have in our community. And lastly, we're trying to provide a quality education and instruction to students in person as safely as possible, and that goes back to our commitment to the safety protocols. However, you're probably asking yourself, then why did you put this on as an agenda item for discussion? Because I'm a former coach, and sometimes and I can relate to this, because sometimes as a former coach, when the other team has the momentum, you sometimes need to take a time out. And sometimes you need to take that time out so that you can regroup, and then you refocus, and then you get back at the task that you've been assigned to do using your game plan. So for me, sitting back, reflecting, thinking about where we are and the seriousness of what's taking place in our community, in our state, in our nation, it causes me to pause and say, let's reflect. Let's take a time out. Let's talk about where we are and what we're doing. So first of all, I have a serious concern, as I've shared with you, about the surge of positive cases. Likewise, we've seen an increase in positive cases within the district in the last 2 weeks. Of our 40 cases, 9 of those have come in the last 2 weeks that make up 22% of our overall total. Department of Health today reported that a quarter of the positive cases in children of school age right now have taken place in the last 2 weeks. So we are mirroring that data that's happening with our school age children. The other thing that has me concerned, as I brought to your attention, is the number of students in quarantine, because that, to me, is the pattern that disrupts our instructional continuity within our classrooms. When we have 20 kids and all of a sudden 7 or 8 are missing, and we're trying to provide in-person instruction to that group of students, as well as to try to provide remote learning for a group of students, trying to figure out if we can live stream lessons, record lessons to send to our students. So now we're asking a little bit more effort for our staff, and they have been pushing and pushing to reach that limit and get that task completed for our students. One of the things that happens is, if we have to quarantine, and at the middle school, for instance, you're assigned to the team that doesn't do remote learning, now all of a sudden you're shifting from a group of teachers that haven't been instructing you, and now you're moving into that environment. At the high school level, we're working on the solution, but we don't have the solution where live streaming can come in. We can do that, but we talked about some of the challenges associated with that, and we're working to solve that problem for the second semester, and we think we have that solution. The other thing that we're worried about is that cases could mean major staff absences. So far, we've held our own in covering. That's what we're doing. Because of the lack of substitutes, we have to use our teaching staff to cover for other teachers. So sometimes that impacts the planning that our teachers do. Now, our teachers plan constantly after the end of the day. They go home, they take their work home. We all do that, we all know that. But there's also some prep and things that they get to do during the day. So we're worried about that. What's happening also is that we have staff members who don't live in our district, but all of a sudden their child's school closes in a nearby district, and they don't have child care. We're losing some of our teachers to that as well, that because their child's school closed, they're taking emergency FFCRA days or every other day. So now there's another disruption to the continuity of instruction in our classroom. So what I'm proposing this evening is that, based on the predictive modeling that I'm seeing and tracking after Thanksgiving break, the 2 weeks on the data I just shared with you, a predicted pattern that I can see happening after the next holiday break, and also the prediction that the number of cases to potentially double into the middle of January has me concerned. Because now, as I said, a quarter of those student cases are now over the last 2 weeks. So predicting that, we're going to see potentially more student cases. That's going to cause us to have to, quarantine, close, and maybe further have a disruption of education. So what I'm proposing is a short-term move for remote learning for our students after the upcoming holiday break. My recommendation is to transfer to full remote learning for K through 12 students from January 4th through the 15th, 2021. Return students to in-person instruction on January 19th because the 18th is a holiday. The next step with that, and the reason that I'm looking at 2 weeks, is January 1st is Friday. So we see Christmas on that Friday. We see New Year's on the next Friday. We know that we're asking people to limit gatherings and not congregate in large areas. Can't guarantee that. So one of the things that I'm recommending is that in order for us to see where we're at, that's where the pause is. So that as we come off break, we would have our teachers still come to the building every single day. They would teach from their classroom to our students following a regularly scheduled day and provide a consistent, uninterrupted continuity of instruction for 10 full days for our students to get everybody kind of back and reset back to where they need to be in curriculum, in pacing, and allow our teachers to get that all caught up based on those recommendations and my reasoning for making that recommendation this evening. As I said, it's only short term. My plan is, as long as things are in good shape and we've gone through that particular time, January 19th, we would open back up. January 27th is the end of the marking period. That will give our teachers a week, almost a week's time to get our students back, get ready for their high school finals on the 26th, 27th, and then change the semester. And hopefully at that point then, we think we'll have our solution to then begin offering a remote option for our high school students to live stream into the classroom on a daily basis for those families that may still be uncomfortable. And we'll still continue offering K through 8, the same level of instruction that we have been. I appreciate the time that you've given me to speak this evening on what is a serious challenge and topic for us as we think about coming back and knowing where we are in the pandemic and what is happening from a local level and a county level. And at this point, I'll entertain any questions that you may have for me.
I have a kind of a discussion point on that, just looking at this for the first time. What would be your thoughts, instead of a 2-week break, having a 1-week break and monitor for symptoms of anyone coming off of that break during that period of time? Because
Mr. Zepp,
you know what I'm saying?
I would prefer 10, but if it's compromised to 5 to monitor and see what's happening, I'll take that as well. But I would prefer 10. But
no, I'd like to hear the board comments, but I'm not big on. I think that parents and students should be very diligent in monitoring themselves, especially coming off the break. You know, during the break or whatever. But
one thing I would add, Richard, to your point, if we did the 5, that would take us to, because I thought about this today, So New Year's Day, which is going to be family gatherings, is January 1st. If we come back the 11th, that's 10 days, which is what CDC, they're saying you should have a 10-day quarantine. You know what I mean? So I thought about that as well. That would be their 10-day quarantine from the 1st and then come back the 11th. But that's just, I was thinking along the lines of what you were saying.
There's been other discussions, I know, in other counties near us that they were going the week, like we have a 2.5 day break, or 2.5 days of in-person instruction, December 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. Some people and other counties have been going remote then for those days, giving yourself now another week plus the week off school plus the week. So giving yourself basically 3 weeks during that time frame.
I almost think you'd be better off going the 2 weeks after. I mean, just because you're concerned about the Christmas get-togethers, the New Year's Day get-togethers.
Correct.
So that's my thought anyways, but I'm thinking if you're better off doing a week after. But anyways, what are other board members thinking?
What day were you thinking about coming back, you said?
Well, he wants to come, or Dr. Mancuso's recommendation is to come back
on the 18th.
The 18th.
We'd be out the 4th through the 15th, with the return on Tuesday the 19th.
Well,
Because the 18th is a holiday.
Yeah, so it would be Tuesday, because we don't have school.
I don't really want to shut down at all, frankly. But the predictive modeling, I mean, that we could argue that a little bit, but I guess what I'm saying is I want to try and keep students in school as much as possible and still, maintain a level of safety that doesn't put our buildings at risk, so.
And we are monitoring our buildings every week. I mean, that's why we shut you down.
The problem that I really see here is, after the first of the year, if you shut down for 2 weeks, your parents are, that don't have time off and things of that. I mean, that creates a big disruption for parents and child care. We all know this. We went through it before. We don't have to relive it. But what's the feeling here among the board?
Dr. Manduska, I'd like to ask a question or two at the same time. I'm in no position to challenge you. It sounds you have demonstrated to me that you're on top of it. Now, you don't have the answers. You don't have the answers, but you certainly are analyzing it. And the predictions as we go through this thing from the state and nationally seem to be right on. I would not want to mess with that and your recommendations. But anyhow, do we know where the virus is being spread? From what point? I think I heard you say, the basketball team is 24 kids at one time. That's a big concern. And it's a big concern of mine, too. I'm not sure we're doing the right thing by having sports, but...
Mr. Shelley, though, they don't all have it. They're just quarantined.
They don't all have it. They just one had it.
I understand. But the potential, the potential is there. I understand it, but that's where you could get it. That's why the quarantine is so effective. At least that's the way I see it.
That is correct.
I've heard, and I believe, the safest place for the children is in school. I don't know that for sure, but what I hear you saying, and what I read and hear, that seems to be pretty good. Now, then I would question, why are we taking the kids out of school and putting them at home where I know they're going to have a remote learning, but it confuses me a little bit. But I certainly would not stand in the road of your recommendation. I would accept it from here, but I still have questions. Everybody has questions.
And Mr. Shelley, to respond to your question,
Yes.
it is my goal, as I said already, I want as much in-person time that I can provide for our students. However, following the last 2 weeks makes me concerned when I start to see student cases rise.
Yes.
That's what concerns me the most. When it's out there and we're able to keep it kind of out there, now what's happening is it's in our communities and it's spreading in our communities, and our families are being infected by that, and now students, because they can't quarantine away, they're being infected. That's the sole reason for my recommendation, is to pause. Let's see what happens following the pattern that I've seen after the Thanksgiving break, and see where we're at, and then, as it's safe, we move back into in-person instruction, and we follow the same protocol that we have been. If I have a set number of cases and I reach that, I close the school. That will not change. I will still follow that. And so, to answer your question, that's what has me most concerned, is when I start to see our school-age children positivity rate increase. And I appreciate your kind comments about staying on top of it. Thank you.
I'll go ahead. I think everybody here pretty much knows my opinion. I really do appreciate all the effort stuff, but I cannot support, because the biggest concerns are childcare and remote learning. I mean, I got several phone calls this past week because of the volume of work sent home for the kids from Kites Creek. One parent told me they were working on schoolwork till 8 o'clock at night because of, dad had to work, mom had 2 kids, she couldn't help, one at a time. I just really have concerns about our community. Both parents work, and you're going to be coming off a break anyway. A lot of parents aren't going to be able to take off work to deal with kids. I could consider it if it was just high school, but I cannot support it if it's elementary through on. I just think it's going to put too much stress on the community.
Well, if you see what I will comment to that, Mr. Keller, you'll see that it's our elementary schools where we're seeing the larger infection rates, and that's what concerns me with the younger group of students that could be asymptomatic as well as symptomatic. And I understand we're asking a lot of our families again. I will not deny that, but what my plan was this evening is to give us almost a whole month to figure that out if we need to.
Well, Dr. Mancuso, I feel the same. This is a really hard subject. I feel the same way as Mark, but I really want everybody to be safe. I also looked into this extremely detailed. I firmly believe that a lot of school-age children have COVID, have 0 symptoms. You'll never know if they're walking around, and it won't matter what day of the week it is. That population, the younger you are, the less susceptible you are to having symptoms. I mean, so the older you are, the quicker you will show the symptoms, especially if you have underlying conditions. So my question really, or my comment, is that at that school population at that age, if they really don't show symptoms at that age and you shut it down for 2 weeks, it's not going to matter in a couple of weeks anyway, if that makes sense. This population, by controlling it by a shutdown at that age.
What I will comment to that, Mr. Zepp, is that we ask our parents to do daily symptom screeners, and for the most part, they're diligent about that and completing that. We are seeing more symptomatic students than we are asymptomatic. When we're quarantining, we typically see asymptomatic. What I've seen now is that as they are quarantining and being exposed, they're becoming symptomatic later in that time frame, and then they're testing positive. So that's what I'm basing that pause on, is because of what I see on the daily basis when our nurses are assessing students, and we keep daily records of who was seen by the nurse and what their symptoms were, and what their quarantine and what their negative or positive is. I'm seeing more symptomatic than I have before.
But I'm looking at the numbers here. This past week, we have 2,400 kids in our district, and we have a total of 6 kids that have it. That percentage is small. Now, what was our number that we've had since the beginning?
40.
40 out of 2,400 kids.
Look at the last 2 weeks is what I'm saying, though. Is follow that data the last 2 weeks. It's more than that. It's more than 6 is what I'm saying. If you look at the last 2 weeks, it's 9.
Okay, 9 kids out of 2,200.
I understand your point, but what I'm saying is we're seeing an increase, Mr. Reese, and that's my concern. So it doesn't, 6 doesn't really at this point, that's not my concern, the low number. What I'm concerned about is it doubling and seeing more cases when we could be proactive and prevent that. And that's what I'm trying to do. And the quarantine is the other issue.
But I'm looking at the education of our kids with remote. We've all heard it. The remote.
This is
doesn't
different.
work.
This is different than before.
Yeah, but our kids have lost almost a whole year of education because of some of the things that are going on.
I would maybe disagree with that based on the education I believe Eastern New York is providing to its students.
I hear what's going on, and that's what we want, a discussion. And nobody here has the answers, I can tell you. What I see and what I hear, we ain't seen nothing yet. It's gonna get bad. All you gotta do is, for me, 3 weeks ago, I didn't know one person. One person was connected with the virus. Today, everywhere you go, whole families. And right in our district, the whole family. I mean, I don't mean immediate family, sisters, aunts, uncles. And it's quite obvious where it's come from. It seems to me, there's an old saying. Now, I know, I'm 85 years old. But I've learned some things. I think I get a little wiser. And I think, let me get this right. It says, an ounce of prevention is worth what? 1 pound of cure. And that's all we're talking about here. You're asking for 2 weeks, a trial. If it goes good, that's it. But if it gets like some of us think it's going to happen, you saved a lot of English. And I agree with the parents. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible situation with child care and working, and I don't know the answer. But I do know that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and that's what you're trying to do. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Yeah, I find myself agreeing with Mr. Shelley. I think you're absolutely right on this, Donovan. I would like to read a piece of a letter that I got from a parent today who actually works in another school district. I won't read the whole thing, but the part that I think is relevant is I work in another district with a teacher who had a student in her classroom as an asymptomatic carrier transmit the virus to her. Unfortunately, she passed the virus to her parents. She lost a father over the weekend, and her mother will require round-the-clock care. In addition, that student lost her grandfather as well. 3 other students in the classroom also tested positive. One passed the virus to his mother, who was 8 months pregnant. The transmission can happen so innocently and have drastic effects on families. I think that kind of speaks for itself. And I think when the superintendent is asking for 5 days, when we're talking about the difference between being in for 5 days or 10 days, keeping kids home, I think we need to think about stuff like that to say, is it worth getting them back in for 5 days to take a chance that he's right and we're wrong?
Mr. Shedwell, I too get text messages. Steve, my neighbor, died. My friend, who's a little obese, went to the hospital. He died. My stepdaughter's husband died. My niece died. And I am sending flowers tomorrow for a business associate of mine, Ron Kirkland. He died. This pandemic has hit everybody. And some of you know that it's hit me pretty hard. not me personally, but my home. So I am fully aware of COVID and its ability to take lives. The question that we have to manage here is, during this pandemic, every single solitary adult that has the responsibility of a student has to take responsibility for their home, because each home has its own individual risk. This district does a fantastic job of education in all circumstances. And Dr. Mancuso does a fantastic job of laying out the facts and making solid recommendations. All of that is a given. The hurt and the pain of the people that are in this district for not sending their kids to school, the untracked result of those things that we do not report on and track are not reported here as well. So there's a totality of this vote, yes or no, to take the recommendation. It's very rare that I don't take the recommendation of the superintendent. But the things that we do not track, and the many parents that would come here and that would have the opportunity to tell us that they do not want us to shut down for 2 weeks, are equally as burdensome for this vote. These kind of votes are the worst, because there's no winning. There's no winning on this vote, none. You can vote to shut down for 2 weeks, and people are still going to get sick. You can vote to not shut down, and then you accuse everybody of wanting to kill everybody or some stupid crap I get again, okay? So there's no winning here, okay? So I don't even know if we need to discuss this. We need to vote it up or down and move forward, because we all know the facts. I don't think anybody's mind's going to change. I think we just do the vote. It's a yes to take the recommendation or no to take the recommendation. And if it's a no to take the recommendation, somebody needs to put on the floor to modify it, or if there's no modification, just no, and that's the end of it. Move forward, come off the break, and that's the end of it.
I would like to talk about that a little bit. Maybe there's some middle ground here. I don't know. Dr. Mancuso should be able to answer this. Could we somehow agree that the shutdown would come, providing what you're predicting gets progressively worse to that point? What I'm saying, you won't have the total, but if it's progressively worse towards it, the right decision. And if it's not, we won't go with it.
Except they're going to be out of school, Darwin, you're not going to know.
Well, somehow we got to find out.
See, I don't like the school district taking the responsibility. We have to, in some cases, to make sure we maintain a sense of responsibility for the population that comes in and out of our brick and mortar. But I am sick and tired of taking the responsibility or having to vote on taking over the responsibility of what parents have to take the responsibility for their students as best they can. I mean, you know, that's just the long and short of it. I just don't want to do that.
Well, the thing is this, I mean, if parents taking that responsibility only affected them,
yeah, that's right,
then you'd be absolutely right, Rich. But
well,
what happens here is when a parent is irresponsible and doesn't take care of what's going on, then you're taking the chance on infecting dozens of people.
So my comment to that is, then we should never have school. Because there's going to be irresponsible parents. Listen, we have the right to be stupid and irresponsible. And that's the problem, okay? You're trying to tell me that because there's some parents out there that are stupid and irresponsible, that we now have to shut down our district. And why 2 weeks? Why not a month? Because we're super worried about the kids, which I am. We all are. I'm not in disagreement with you. I'm just sick and tired of these votes where we got to go ahead and put people out. And it's not your fault. I'm not bitching. Sorry. Okay. I just want to make sure I saw you moving around. I'm just writing down dates. Okay. I'm just sick of this thing where we have to vote. We make it to where we feel safe, and then the parents are going to suffer with their lack of income for 2 weeks, and people live on the edge. And so now we've got Now, what about them? What do we do? Do we allocate money for childcare?
Well, listen, I mean, I think that might be where we disagree a little bit, Rich, because whatever we do, I don't feel safe here. I don't think there is any answer that we can possibly come up with that's going to make anybody safe. So when I look at this, I feel like the superintendent is telling us that he's looking historically. He sees what the surge was after Thanksgiving. He knows that he needed a 2-week period to see the full effects of that. And he's asking for that 2-week period. I don't believe that that's an unreasonable precaution on his part. And quite frankly, I would much rather that we be wrong and we took an extra 5 days and the cases don't go up, as opposed to we cut it by 5 days, and for those 5 days, now we got 40 new cases in the school.
But I thought I was not here to represent the parents that you're talking about, Richard. I think our job and our duty and our responsibility and our commitment is to the children, not to the parents. Come on, Richard. Let's not take a chance on infecting a lot of kids because of some students or some parents that just don't give a damn. Come on.
See, that's why I hate these discussions. It just goes down that road.
Go ahead, Jim.
Swear to God.
But I'm looking at the program that we are using right now. If we get 4 cases in an elementary, we close. Why do we need to change everything when we already have a program? We get to 4 cases, we close for 3 days. If the high school has too many cases, we close for those days. Why are we changing and sending everybody home when we already have a program? If all of a sudden we get a surge at KC, well, we've taken care of it, because we do have a surge at KC right now. We've had a surge at Wrightsville. If we already have the program to handle these extra cases, why are we talking about shutting everything down?
I think the answer was in continuity of education. Can't hear you, Bob. Continuity of education. When we shut down a grade or a building, it disrupts the education process. If we can shut down for 2 weeks and avoid all that, we're still going to get educated for those 2 weeks. It's not like we're shutting down on a snow day in the old days where you didn't go to school. We're still going to educate. So it's the other thing, and I think I answered your question, but while I'm speaking, I just want to make a comment. I think we have to look at this, and Mr. Shelley's partially right, but we have a responsibility to the community. I think this is a responsible approach to our community, because our students, while they may be safe here, and while they may be asymptomatic and may not be sick, they still go home into the community. And so while they're in here, all close together, and passing that bug back and forth, they go back into the community. And so if we could be a large contributor to continuing to spread in our community, or we can be responsible to the community and slow it down. So I don't think it's unrealistic. I think it's very responsible to request the 2 weeks.
Thank you, Todd. So right now I feel like we're 3-3. So Holtzinger, Bailey, are you guys good with the 2 weeks, or are you? I'm just trying to get an idea where you guys are at.
If we go, the first 5 days we're down, are there health checks done every day for those students? And is that reported back to us to follow any trend to gather the same data you're gathering now?
Holtzinger, Rich, could you repeat that, please? We couldn't hear you. We couldn't understand that.
So we're on remote learning, second week of January, whatever it may be. The first week of shutdown. Are there self-health checks performed and reported by those students while they're at home that we can collect that data to follow any trend that you're already following, to know whether we need another week or we're in good shape.
We could ask our families, Mr. Holtzinger, just to continue to do the daily symptom screener like they do now when they're coming into school. The other thing that we did ask our families over the holidays was to stay in communication with us if they were having to quarantine or exposures or cases. And our families did do that. They did follow through and they did let us know what was going on. Just what has happened now, though, is the return and being in school in that second week. That's where we're starting to see those positivities increase and the exposures taking place. So to me, it's really not the first week, it's that second week that we would be potentially coming back in and seeing the same thing happen that we're seeing this week with the large number of quarantines. So yes, we could do that for the 2 weeks, but last week was less, and this week was kind of the increase because it was 2 weeks away kind of from the Thanksgiving date where there potentially were larger gatherings of folks.
Yeah, I understand the proactive approach. I mean, I get it, but I'm just looking at a compromise with 1 week versus 2 weeks, and I do understand it. You have to use this data to our advantage, and if we don't, we're foolish. I think I'm good either way. I want to go with the group, but I feel for the parents, but then at the same time, we don't want to be spreading back to the community like Todd said. So we could be setting ourselves up. It's unknown, so.
Thanks, Rich. Mark, do you want to go, or you already went? But I saw you pull your thing back. I was going to go to Bailey,
I
but
got a couple comments here.
Go ahead.
I have a couple things I just thought of and stuff. I mean, the biggest gathering day is probably Christmas, which the 4th, you're at 9 days past Christmas. I mean, we've never got together New Year's Day or anything, let's watch football. But, so, I mean, if you would go 1 day to the 5th, that would give you your 10 days from Christmas for that quarantine period at that point in time. That is one thing I thought of. The other thing I just thought of is, would you be thinking of having co-curricular events during all this?
No.
I mean, because the governor just shut down.
No, because the governor just shut down all activities till January 4th.
Right, so you're going to do another 2 weeks.
Yeah, we could. I'm sorry?
Now you can extend another 2 weeks.
No. If everything was good there and we were planning to go remote and the orders were lifted, then I think we could proceed as long as we're seeing a good reduction, hopefully, in cases.
But I didn't think if you were remote.
So if we say we're going to go remote that week and the governor says we can start athletics on the 5th, we're going to start it back up on the 5th, right?
I didn't think
that would be the plan if nothing changes, yes.
Well, what would change if we would shut down?
I'm saying if the governor would extend the order.
Oh, yeah, but I'm saying if he says we can start on the 5th, just because we're remote for another 2 weeks, you said we were still going to have athletics and extracurriculars, correct?
We could continue with that. We could begin those again, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Jason, are you positive? I thought if the school was remote, all extracurricular was shut down.
No, I don't think that is the case. You found out that's not the case.
That was only if you did not sign the attestation form.
Yeah.
But it's going to be tough to sell to the community that we don't trust coming to school for school, but we're going to let you come for athletics.
Yeah, but we're limiting the spectators that are coming in for athletics anyway.
Right.
So you're talking about a limited exposure situation versus all the kids being in school for 8 hours, sitting in the classroom.
Right. The other thing that we have to consider now is, and I think today we had reached our 15 days of practices that were required by the PIAA. I would have to double check that with Mr. Knob because you have to have 15 days of practices before you can actually have a competition. And I don't know, like the league, I just sent you the league was delaying till next week anyhow. I don't know at this point if they'll reset or what their plans will be for competition after that as well. I think we need to let that just simply play out. But I would think we could look at varsity sports potentially at that time, because we would be potting our kids and coming in when nobody else was in the building. And we could spread out and do the things that we've continued to do for athletics.
Bailey?
I personally, I've seen this COVID now, myself and my family. I don't want to shut down either, but in light of the situation and what we're seeing trending, I'm for Dr. Mancuso's recommendation for the 2 weeks at this point. From what we're seeing, we could see certain schools shut down by Christmas anyway. I don't know what's going to happen either, but I am for the 2 weeks.
I'll go ahead and make a motion that we accept the superintendent's recommendation.
I got a comment.
Okay, well, we need a motion and a second, and I think we have to open it up for public comment too, correct?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that a concern that we're not going to have public comment? I mean, probably we should have discussed this last month and go on tonight to have the opportunity for public comment, or, 2 weeks ago, and then, because you haven't been public comment unless somebody emails in now.
Yeah.
Well, it was on the agenda though, so
Yeah,
I think.
it's an agenda item.
It was on the agenda.
Yeah.
So since Monday.
Well, is there any,
The discussion, not the motion.
Right.
Mr. Zepko? Okay, well, we have a motion.
Right.
Okay, well, and we have a motion and a second. Can we legally do that? Can we legally have a vote on this?
Yeah, of course.
I believe you can legally vote on
Okay.
it because our meeting has
Mr.
been
Malone,
advertised.
if you recall at the last board meeting, you authorized me a certain number of days to close.
To close anyways.
But that was not up to 14
Well, it
days.
wasn't a whole district though.
Yeah, that was a week for if I needed to do the district or schools, and then the new regulations came out. So I think if the board would want to do that, based on the way you framed it to me with the authority you gave me, is that the board would have to decide to close her for a longer time than the 5 days.
Okay, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, the 10 days.
Do we do public comment first, or do we do board member comments?
Board comment.
Board
Okay,
comment.
okay, all right. We have a motion and a second to take Dr. Mancuso's recommendation.
I think you seconded it.
I did not second it.
Mr. Lentz did.
Okay. Now, comment. What I will respectfully ask John and Todd to do is to modify that. They do not have to, of course, we can up and down this, but here's what I would say. Following the statistics based on the same standard of how we acquired the statistics here, the 25th was Thanksgiving, or 26th was Thanksgiving. To Mr. Keller's point, the first would be
Friday.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, coming back on, I'm sorry, excuse me. If you had the 25th, because I think, and just think about this, the rise in cases was from the gatherings potentially from Thanksgiving, correct? So from Thanksgiving till Tuesday, 26 was a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. You had 6 days. So with a massive gathering of people coming all in, you should expect to see a rise. Under those, you use those same exact standards for Christmas, because you wouldn't see the symptoms potentially for a couple days. You would see them after you would get to school, because school is happening, 6 days after Thanksgiving. However, for Christmas and the time you come back would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days. I would say that if we shut down for 1 week, given those same standards, it's basically you gathering the data the same exact way, because you're going to have students that are coming in after that time to show positive. And the only way to show positive is if you have symptoms. If anybody's been tested for coronavirus, you have to have symptoms. You just can't, it's rare that you can just walk in and ask for one. So, even that same standard, you would have how many days there? If we came back on the 8th rather than the 18th. I'm sorry, come back on the 11th. So you'd have, from the 25th, you'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 days out. That's my statistical, non-emotional, apples to apples comparison to the statistics that was shown here on how we arrived at social distancing given the gathering day of Christmas versus Thanksgiving. I don't want to miss any school, okay? And I'm not going to cry if we're out for 2 weeks, okay? Don't get me wrong. I'm not against, you know, and what Mr. Lentz said was very good. The consistency of learning, I think, is what you used those words. Did I say that?
Yes.
So I'm continuity. That's it. See, I don't know those things. See, I'm a Neanderthal words. At the end of the day, I agree with you. I agree with everybody here. I just don't want to shut down. I would respectfully request the motion to be modified to come back on whatever day I said there, rather than the 2 weeks. If you decide not to do that, what I would do is I will vote no, and if that motion does not carry, I will put forward the motion to come back
Well,
1 week rather than 2.
let me ask you this too, because if we got to take consideration in the New Year's Day. I think we have to.
Yes, I agree.
Gathering on New Year's Day. What if we come back, we do this all the time anyways. What if we come back like the 13th or the 14th? Come back, that gives us, from the first, that gives us a week and a half off, you know, that we're not in.
Well,
and we do that, I mean, even after the holidays, we'll come back on Thursday, January 2nd, or 3rd, you know what I mean? And that gets our kids back in quicker.
Okay, it's my motion on the floor, so let me say what I'm willing to rephrase my motion.
Okay.
What I'm willing to do is to authorize the superintendent to reopen up to or before the 19th, depending on what he finds is acceptable in the community. I trust Dr. Mancuso to monitor the situation and to make that decision. And he's going to have data from their home testing. He just said when they're remote learning for that first week, he's going to be able to gather information.
As long as our parents comply and still do the symptom screen or increase the amount of time that they're doing the screen or for
So all I'm saying is I'd like my motion to authorize the superintendent to go up to, is it the 19th when you want to bring them back, Dr. Mancuso?
Yes.
But in his judgment, if he feels he can bring them back sooner, I would make that a part of that motion.
I'm not really sure you can do that without me pulling my second down.
I know. Well, I understand. I have to modify mine, and then you have to either agree or disagree.
And I respectfully disagree.
Okay.
So you're either pick one or the other.
I'm going to make it something. I think that's going to be hard for him to do. And I think he agrees with that. I think it's going to be hard for him to, especially if we're trying to make parents like, okay, this is what we're going to come back at. And I think you're agreeing that's going to be a difficult task.
Okay. Well,
For me, I would like to have our families have one or the other as a date to either end and start.
Right. As I think about that, you're absolutely right. They're better off knowing what's going on. So I'll withdraw my modification and leave the motion on the floor.
May I say something? I hear you people are saying, you know, they're taking up to now using the statistics, and again, I'm not overriding or trying to override what you're saying. It's just an observation. The chart that was shown here with the steep increase, it calls local. Well, all you got to do is look at the television. That's not just local. That's the county, that's the state, that's the United States, and I won't go any further than that because I'm not sure. But I do know that every day is a completely new record. And it goes up every day. It's no sign of coming down. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I mean, you know, if we get out of this with 2 weeks shutdown, we are lucky. We are lucky.
And it's not a shutdown, it's a change in instructional
Yes.
programming, the way in which we're going to provide, but we will still
Yes.
provide the education.
Yes, and I'm sorry for saying that.
That's okay.
Okay.
Let's call for a vote.
Well,
There's a motion and a second on the floor.
okay, we have a motion, a second. Yep, we have, do we have any public comment? Just if you wouldn't mind coming up to the microphone, you can remove your mask to talk to if you want to, once you get to the microphone. Well, you were a couple steps over, but that's all right.
Sorry, I was dying to take it off. My glasses are bumped up.
No, yeah. No, can she speak on any agenda items right now, or is this just on this? So you speak on this, what we're doing right now, and then next we'll have, you can speak on any other agenda items.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
My name is Stephanie Bausman. I have a sophomore and a sixth grader, high school, middle school.
Actually, I can't hear you.
Can you speak a little louder?
Sure.
There you go.
Hi. My name is Stephanie Bausman. I have a sophomore and a sixth grader, high school, middle schooler. Currently, they are quarantined right now. They do not show any signs of COVID, but they are desperately needing to go back to school. So I would say not for the remote learning. But I do have 6 beautiful pages that I wrote today to talk about remote learning. So, thank you.
Yeah, right.
That's a different item. I plan on coming back. Or unless you want me to go now.
How many pages?
No, you can't, you have to wait for this motion to be resolved.
Right, this motion and second is only for this.
Yeah, but my question is if she wants to discuss remote learning, and that's what we're talking about doing.
It is remote learning.
That's not the motion that's on the floor.
I can
Motion
come
is
back.
whether remote learning is not part of the motion.
But that's what the recommendation was, to go remote learning.
I think, in this case, I think.
For 2 weeks.
I think she does have a right to talk about it, because we are going to remote learning.
Yeah, I mean, my recommendation would be to allow the patron to speak regarding remote learning, because it is a portion of the motion regarding remote learning.
And if she's going to speak regardless anyways, I'd rather side on the let her speak now. And then this is going to be, you're going to do your speak now and then.
Yep.
Okay. All right, go ahead, continue.
All right. I'm here because we as parents are the biggest advocates for our children, and that's one of the lessons that we have been trying to convey to our kids. They are also advocates for themselves. I have 2 children, a sophomore and a sixth grader in middle school. We have always had great experiences at Eastern with the teachers' administration. No doubt everyone is doing the best that they know how through the pandemic, so we appreciate that. My husband and I feel that we are 9 months into this, and it doesn't look like online or blended learning is going away, so now we need to start making some fine-tuned adjustments, and not just that's how we've always done it, or not have any standard procedures and protocols in place for the structure change of online learning. My husband and I work from home, so we have the opportunity to listen in on Google Meets and really get involved with our kids' education, which we're very fortunate to do. We realize most parents do not have the ability to be so involved. I have a hard time putting into words what my kids need online because you don't know what you don't know. And my kids are struggling just as well to effectively communicate what they need from their teachers. There is definitely a misalignment from in-person learning to online learning, especially when the families aren't given any instruction of what their days will look like when they're in remote learning model. And so I'm going to read you several emails about our struggles as a family and particularly as students to the teachers. Okay, just for reference, my kids were both cohort A blended first for the first marking period, and now we're in-person learning for the second marking period. They switched to online learning recently because they were in contact with someone that may have had COVID. This is the first email that we sent. This was to Dr. Mitzel. I was listening to an advanced Algebra 2 Google Meet today and realized that Austin wasn't preparing to take a test like the in-school kids were. I was surprised by that. Asked him what would be the reason for that. He said he will take it when he returns to school, which will be December 14th in 11 days. He thought the reason might be because of cheating, which makes no sense whatsoever. There are cyber students and remote learning students taking tests from home all the time. Why would he not take a test? He's remote learning. He has time now while he's remote learning, so why wait? I know these situations are uncharted territory, but I foresee several problems here. And let me give you an example. Austin has been an excellent student, all A's, occasional B, up until the first marking period of this year when he was in blended. He was out for a week of school because of the pandemic. He was not able to get his wisdom teeth out during the summer and had to get them out at the beginning of September. It threw his learning into a tailspin of not being able to catch up, not only with his advanced algebra class, but also his Spanish 2 class. He reserved his first C last marking period in algebra and scraped by with a B in Spanish. His stress level was at an all-time high. His algebra teacher continually gave him zeros on his assignments until he was able to make them up, keeping him at a D or an F until at the very end of the marking period when she graded everything. We did bring this up during conferences, but really there wasn't a good reason as to why she was doing this. If he was playing a sport, he would have been ineligible all marking period. We have never, ever had to worry about ineligibility from Austin, ever. It would have been different if he was just being lazy, but he worked his butt off just to receive a C. He stayed after and went in early to get caught up 2 or 3 times a week. Mind you, he was at the point of blended, so he was only in school for 2 days. His homework time when he was in blended model was 3 to 4 hours a night, all classes, consistently. These teachers were not gauging what they were giving these kids. If he has this much homework trying to play catch up during basketball season, it's not going to be feasible. I certainly don't want to gripe about his teachers. They are doing the best they can with what they got, but some consistency will be helpful. So here are my questions. Do you have a standard procedure in place for teachers regarding how they grade assessments, classwork, homework, participation, quizzes, tests when some of their students are quarantined because of close contact, not because they are sick? I realize all teachers have different teaching styles, and I do appreciate that. Austin's advanced algebra 2 today was very upbeat. She was engaging. She taught excellent. She did an excellent job, and Austin likes her very much. So it's not about the teacher's teaching style. It's about how they are going from in-person to remote. My second question was, will the items above, tests, quizzes, or anything else he can't do at home remain as zeros in the grade book until he can make up the work and the teacher can grade? His worry, and ours, is that he'll be at a lower grade, causing him to be ineligible for varsity basketball. The zeros last marking period caused stress, terrible stress, discouragement, and depression. 3 characteristics I would have never described Austin to be. Dr. Mitzel referred us to have direct contact with his teachers to answer my questions. So Austin emailed all his teachers asking what his day would be looking like. Here's one of the emails. Hey, Mrs. Teacher, I wish I didn't have to send this email to any of my teachers, but the position I'm in makes it very hard. I'm emailing about all the lost time I have in class and how I do not want to fall behind like I did last marking period and have to rush and not understand things. Is it possible to have due dates pushed back so I can get the proper help needed when I come back? The last thing I want to happen is to fall behind and become ineligible for a season, and even worse, finish with a bad grade. I am more than willing to stay after school on the days I don't have practice right away and work to get myself caught up as much as I can, and find it extremely hard to learn online. And I know I'm missing a lot of lessons and tests. Also, like you did last marking period, is it possible to refrain and not put zeros in for missing assignments and tests when they were due? I know it may motivate some people, but for me it makes me more stressed out and poorly reflects how I'm actually doing in class. My second email. Here was my initial email to my 6th graders, teacher, and principal.
Now, did he get a response back from his teacher?
He did. She was very gracious. She did not comment about the zeros. And her class is very, very fast because it's advanced algebra. And they've been working back and forth. He's still missing that test.
It's still in there as a 0.
I do not know, but that was the concern that we had. Going to my sixth grader, oddly enough, they were quarantined around the same time. Here was my initial email to them. I have a planner on my hands, and Olivia is desperate to know what her day is looking like tomorrow and the rest of the week. Who or where does she sign into? My son is also remote learning, and last week we figured out that he does not have to log in like he did the first marking period when he was blended. Is she the same, or is she just going into each Google Class meet, or is everything being emailed? All the rules have changed, so we just need some guidance. We appreciate your help. She's driving me bonkers with questions, and I can't answer any of them. This was the response for one teacher. I don't want to speak out of turn, so I'll wait a bit to tell you what I think she does tomorrow. It all makes sense now. The teachers don't have any protocols or standards or procedures to go by from the administration. They are leaving it up to the teachers to decide how they teach in person and remotely, and they're all different. So if you have 8 classes, 2 kids, 4 classes each teacher is teaching differently in person and remotely. They're leaving it up to the teachers, how we can help our students not fall behind while we're in a pandemic. So my suggestion is that we have a committee in each building that would include administrators, teachers, parents, caregivers, and students to come up with a remote learning protocol so we aren't guessing of what's going to happen next. We are getting calls from them both being absent from school. I think that has stopped, but the first couple days we were both getting absentee reminders that they weren't in school. They're online learning, they're not absent. We were getting calls, I think that was stopped, but the high school is labeling my 10th grader excused, sent home by nurse, even though he is remote learning and not sick. That's not right. He's not homesick. I've spent countless hours emailing and trying to figure things out. I can't even imagine having more than 2 kids and keeping their school schedule straight, or working outside the home. So I feel as though my voice is also for parents that can't be involved as much as I am. And I'm pretty involved. So that was my remote learning, and the only suggestion I have is to have some committees. How many board members have students in school? 3. I don't know what else. This is all uncharted territory, but I really think a committee of some sort to help. I know the teachers and the students all need help navigating, and the administration. So, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for the recommendation. Any other comments or anything before we vote?
I would request a roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Weaver, roll call vote.
Mr. Reese? No. Mr. Shelley?
Yes.
Mr. Shevlu?
Yes.
Mr. Zepp? Mr. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Holtzinger?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
No.
Mr. Lentz?
Yes.
And Mr. Malone?
No.
That motion carries 5 yes and 4 no.
Okay. So we're clear. So we're going to be remote for those 2 weeks, and then Dr. Mancuso, we will be back the 19th, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay. That does the, we done the, education, okay.
Yes.
Okay. We've reached the point for hearing the patrons for any other agenda items. Oh, okay.
I do have one more. This was not in regards to remote. It is in regards, it's my husband's voice. He had prior commitment. His name is Jeff Bousman. Says, I was hoping to be here tonight. However, due to prior commitments, I am unable to attend. Thank you for hearing my voice in my absence. I'd like to address what some, if if not many overlook, is eligibility. Eligibility is much more important than most administrators and teachers make it out to be.
Ms. Bowden?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. You'll be a point at the end for you to go over it. Sorry.
So I gotta wait.
Yeah, so, because it's not on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but there'll be a point at the end of the meeting where you'll be able to speak.
Okay.
But I don't think we'll be too much longer.
Okay, that's
Hopefully.
fine. All right, I'll be back.
Thanks. Anybody else for agenda items? Okay. Secretary's report, Mrs. Weaver.
Thank you. First items in my report are under budget and finance. I would be asking for a motion under the Secretary's report 6.1 through 6.9.
Motion.
We have a motion and a second for 6.1 through 6.9. Questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes.
The next section of my report is under co-curricular, and so I would be asking for a motion for just one item, 7.1.
Motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on 7.1. We have any questions, comments? Mr. Keller, we discussed this, the co-curricular. Do you want to add anything to it? Yeah. Yeah, we think it's going to be very low impact to waive the admissions because we're not going to have hardly any spectators anyways. And yeah, so any other questions from the board at all? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
The next section of my report is under operations, and I would be asking for a motion for item 8.1.
Motion.
Motion and second on 8.1. Questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And the last section of my report is under donations and disposals. I'd be asking for a motion for 9.1.
Listen. Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and second on 9.1. Questions, comments? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you. That concludes my report.
Superintendent's report. Dr. Mancuso.
Thank you, Mr. Malone. Seeking approval under Superintendent Report for Personnel. Motion to approve items 10.1 through 10.6.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on 10.1 through 10.6. Questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes.
Superintendent's Report for Curriculum. Approval for 11.1.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for 11.1. Questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes.
I have no other items this evening.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I have nothing for the President's report either. Committee reports, Budget and Finance, Mr. Chevalier.
Actually, though we didn't have a Budget and Finance meeting, we did have an opportunity to go over the audit report, so we did have a meeting on that earlier this month. Suffice it to say that the audit was clean, there was a clean opinion, and as always, Mrs. Weaver's department did an amazing job.
Thank you. Co-curricular, Mr. Keller.
Yes, we did have a meeting last week. The main items of discussion were staff winter sports with the limitations on spectators and the admissions, which we just voted on.
And just in case anybody saw, they did the governor postponed winter sports to January 4th,
Yeah,
correct?
there was a suspension of a co-curricular and sports until January 4th. They may begin again on January 4th at 8 a.m.
Gotcha.
On these, a question for Mark. On the suspension of costs to go into the events, this come up before, are we gonna still pay ticket takers?
We're going to have one, just so many, because the way the plan is right now, each participant will get so many tickets to give to their family. Some will be at the door to take those tickets, but it'll just be one instead of 4 at each door, and 2 at each door rather. It'll probably just be one main door with one person. We still do have to have some security, and we still have to have the scorekeepers and that stuff. Yeah.
My opinion is of that whole thing, the extracurricular is gonna take care of itself. You know, if the pandemic gets worse, like it's being predicted, there'll be none. Because other schools they're not gonna all be like Easter. Some schools are gonna cancel them, and it'll be a mix mash. It's just like the colleges. All I'm saying is more to come.
Mr. Keller, operations.
We did not need to terminate the board meeting.
Thank you. Policy, Mr. Reese.
Nothing yet.
Mr. Shelley, York County School of Technology.
Yeah, I do have a small report. I did attend by phone the November 24th meeting. These meetings are getting old, and not very interesting. But the most important thing is the budget was voted on to be sent out to the 14 school districts for their consideration, to be voted on in December, January, and February. Was the budget distributed to all members yet?
It has not been distributed. We would talk about it at the January budget and finance meeting, but I will send it out to the members earlier.
All I'm saying is it's not proper, I don't think, for me to talk about it at this point. It should be through a committee and through administration, which is all part of this budget. The budget is earlier than normal for, we're not talking a final budget yet for Eastern, but yet the technology budget and Eastern budget are the same time, July to July. But it's done so the local school districts can prepare for the finances to support it. So all the operating committee did was voted to send it out to the local school districts for consideration. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Shelley. York County School of Technology Authority, Mr. Zepp.
You all have the minutes of the last meeting. I'd like to draw your attention to, one, the pictures are fun to look at, it's going along nicely. The percent of completion, it's getting up there. I saw it was like 76% or something like that. I just saw it here a minute ago. You can see it for yourself. But one thing I continue to look at so far, there's only $18,000 of change order, approved change orders on a $10 million bill, which is very nice. I don't expect that to hold. I keep saying that every month, but very nice so far. It's not egregious based on the last 4 or 5 bills I've been a part of. So I'm very pleased with that. Take a look at the pictures. You see the concrete outside is being poured, sidewalks, it's taking shape. So we can arrange, if anybody would like to take a tour at some point, I'm sure the authority will make it known to the districts. We can get in there and take a look around.
Thank you. Stay with you for York Adams Academy.
Yeah, shout out to Ms. Waddler and her family, Divide. She earned all her credits to graduate. Looking at her transcript, very, very impressive. Nice job. We're not going to have a graduation ceremony, as Thaddeus Stevens was in, invited all the students in to do a pony show with Thaddeus Stevens, and 17 students attended the Thaddeus Stevens show. So it was very nice, very well done. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Informational items, Dr. Mancuso.
See, as a result of the recent special education hire, you see that we had some employees move back around to their original buildings where they were at. We will still take a board picture. It may look a little different this year than the past couple of years. And on behalf of the district and everybody, thank you this evening for a very serious topic, a live discussion. And that is what I appreciate about this board, is that you study a topic, you make your comments, and then we make a decision. And I know after that, we'll move out and do what is in the best interest of all of our students. So I thank all the board members tonight. I know it's not easy from where you sit when you get this information and you have tough decisions. So I appreciate and want you to know that I understand it's a tough call for you. From where I sit, it's a tough call for 10 of us. And we make decisions what we think is best, and we'll move forward and continue to do what is in the best interest for this district. And I thank you for that. And I wish all our families happy holidays in a safe manner. And mask up, social distance, wash hands. We want to stay in school, and we want to return to school after the holidays. So thank you.
Thank you. Just have the upcoming meeting dates there now. So we reached the point for final board comments. I have a couple of things I just want to start with. Again, I'm going to kind of reiterate what Dr. Mancuso said. Thank them again for, putting all this together tonight. I want to thank the board because I thought it was a great discussion the board had. Again, a year ago, none of us ever thought, we thought we'd be talking about building buildings or putting on a roof or whatever. None of us thought, I say this all the time, but none of us would never thought we'd be tasked to decide what was right or wrong. But one thing about this board, I think everybody up here has what's in the best interest of the students in mind. And I think somebody said it tonight, we don't know what's right or wrong. We really don't, and we're just doing the best we can. But again, I think when this is all said and done, the board's all on the same page. And like I said, it's nobody ever, we shouldn't all agree on everything. So again, I want to thank everybody. It was very respectful tonight, and I thought it was very good dialogue from everybody. So we're where we're at. We move forward and just continue to do the best we can. So again, I want to thank everybody for that. One thing I have for final board comment, and this is a question, I actually had this brought up to me today, and it's kind of in regards to with where we're at. One of the things, like they canceled youth basketball, but this is countywide. The countywide canceled youth basketball. And one of the things they said was, well, none of the school districts were letting us use the gyms. I said, well, nobody really brought that up to us, but this was not Eastern. This was every school district in the county, so they just canceled the league. So I had somebody mention to me today, for spring sports, they're trying to get, like it was the boys lacrosse. They said they use our stadium outside, and then they use Wrightsville to practice. And they're getting response back that, well, we don't know if we're going to allow to use our facilities or not. One of the things they had mentioned to me, because it's hard, because what's happening is their league now is doing the same thing basketball was. Are the schools going to be able to get the fields to use? They're trying to determine if they're going to have a spring season or not. He said, is it, like, could we, like, nobody's ever talked to the board about it. What are we doing for usage for outside organizations, youth organizations that want to use our facilities? He had mentioned, could they put in and get the facility, and then in the spring, if everything's terrible, then we could just say, no, you can't use it. I'm asking that question because it was brought up to me today.
Mr. Malone, we had through the fall and through the winter, we had not planned to open up our facilities to outside groups.
Organization.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. That has been our stance, and I believe where we're at right now, that would continue. I know that we had internal discussions with some of our winter youth organizations early about whether they were or were not, and then eventually the decision was made, as you said, at the total local level to not have the youth sports basketball. But internally for some of our programs, we were having those discussions. If they were affiliated with Eastern New York School District. But if there were some outside organizations that wanted to come in for meetings, we weren't permitting.
So like in the spring, if soccer or lacrosse want to use our outside fields, are we going to allow them, or?
I think it's all dependent on where we're at. The same thing with the pandemic, where we're at, and are we having spring athletics, or are we pausing our own school district interscholastic sports programs too? I think those all go hand in hand with what's happening and what we'll allow.
Okay.
If things are better in the spring and things have lightened up and we're outside, that makes it a little bit more palatable to me to have that discussion than being inside where we can't do as much social distance.
Yeah, this would be out. These are outside.
Yes. So I think we entertain that conversation when the time gets there.
Okay. Now, and I'm not disagreeing, but keep in mind, they need to start planning as well. So I'm thinking that maybe we should, I don't think that would be co-curricular, but I don't know, is that a board decision whether or not we're going to let outside people use it, or is it?
Hasn't been it's not for other groups that do right now. It's an internal process. They send the information to the building principal, and then the building principal, under normal circumstances, approves those requests.
But shouldn't we be involved? I mean, to me, that's a major decision if we're not going to let any outside organizations use our facilities.
It's also in our health and safety plan that we're limiting outside activities. That is limiting gatherings within our building. That is in our health and safety plan.
In the building or outside the building?
So, it's just limiting visitors. It doesn't say inside or outside.
I think obviously this board always wanted the participation from the local groups, because they're the people that own the facilities. It's not the school board, it's not administration. But let's wait until the time comes, because things are going to change, guys. I hope it's for the better.
And Mr. Shelley, I think that's a good point.
Mr. Malone, are you asking them just to put in a request and us hold the request?
Well, I don't know. You mentioned to me today
at this point,
that
I can't commit, because I don't know what's even going to happen with our, as I said, with our interscholastic athletics in the spring, let alone commit to our youth organization.
Yeah, and that's what he said. He did put in a request, and they told him they didn't have any answer for him.
Correct. And so what I would say is that's unfortunately the best response that we can give at this time. If things get better and we're having a more typical potential spring, I would entertain us allowing them to use the outside facility.
Okay. And I think that could be a board discussion in maybe February about the spring. Because I do think that should be, if we're not going to allow, I think that should come from the board, I think. I don't, well, because I think it's board, like right now, we never changed the policy to say, we never said.
But our health and safety plan currently has
that. We approved,
yes,
said
yes,
that. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
Yes, that's what I'm referring to. That's what we approved.
Okay. And again, it is what it is, really.
Correct. And as everything's on a case-by-case basis review as we see where the situation sits.
Okay.
I'm not opposed. I'll entertain it, and we'll see where it goes from there when we get to that point.
Okay. Any other final board comments?
Yeah, I have a kind of question. One thing Mrs. Bowsman said about teachers putting in zeros for the kids before they had a chance to make the work. I thought we already addressed that they're not allowed to do that until the kid has adequate amount of time to make the work up, which I thought spelled out in the handbook.
That matter is being addressed.
Okay.
Just to piggyback on what Mr. Keller was talking about, I want to thank Mrs. Bowsman, because I've heard a lot of complaints about the same thing, Mark. Zeros, not getting work done. She also brought up a new one where the kids are being marked absent when they're on remote or they're quarantined. And I mean, there's a lot of little things out there that I think you guys really got your job cut out to find out exactly what is happening in some of our schools. Because the remote and the kids, a lot of parents are upset. Their kids have never been seized, always been on distinguished honor roll, kids aren't making distinguished honor roll, this isn't going right, this isn't going right. So there are some issues. And thank her for coming and letting everybody know that there are some problems. And I know the administration will take care of it.
Mr. Chairman, I want to say a couple things about the same subject, remote learning. I don't know, I'm not an educator. Have any of our teachers, our administration, or even board members been trained on the proper way to run a remote learning classroom? I can probably say no, because we never needed it.
I have.
You have, okay.
I can,
We'll hire you.
all the way back to May, in the spring, 6 weeks, we went on and had professional development with our teaching staff on expectations and strategies to use within a remote learning environment. And so that was our first, and we've continued that at the beginning of the year, all the way up until we suspended and went back. Every Wednesday, we were providing professional development to our staff on different strategies, on our playlists, if you recall, when Dr. Becker spoke to those in the spring. Those are now evolving into advanced learning plans that Dr. Becker also presented, that will be the avenue that will allow us to go between home and school. Are we there yet? Most certainly not, because this is evolving as we go. The one thing I want everybody to understand is that when we're in the remote learning environment for the 10 days that we just talked about, it will be different than the AB model. Because in the AB model, they were only given instruction 2 days a week. The expectation now will be 5 days a week, every day of instruction. It may not be at the high school level, 80 minutes of instruction on screen. It may be a 20-minute lesson, like you're in the classroom, assign work to the students, come on, discuss, close out the lesson. At the elementary level, the same thing. We'll provide daily instruction, however, it may be a mini lesson with follow-up with small groups and whole group. Not everybody has had that opportunity to do this fully yet, except in the AB environment. So now that's how that will look different. There will be the expectation. That's why we want our teachers to come into the classroom every day so that they have all of their resources available to them to provide that during the remote learning environment. That is what we see as the difference right now. And we have provided training and will continue to provide training to our staff on being effective remote learning instructors.
The only reason I brought this, well, you guys brought it up first, but we're not the only place in Pennsylvania, York County, all 14 school districts, again, 500 school districts in Pennsylvania, and you multiply that by in the United States, there's a lot of people that 2 years ago, we had no remote learning. Now everybody has it. And everybody's searching for the best way to do it. And I certainly, when I hear, I don't like either. But I do know that what the teachers that I know are doing a heck of a job. I was going to say something else, but hold on. I don't care. But because I know they do have the kids or the students at heart, and they are really, really trying. Yes, they're making mistakes, but so is everybody else. I do know by far that the teachers that I know are doing the best they can.
Mr. Shelley, I think you're right. I think 80–90% of our teachers are going above and beyond and doing an excellent job. So I agree. I mean, the elementary teachers, people are raving about the elementary teachers. So I think most of them are doing a good job.
And we did have positive feedback from some parents about the recent experience that Wrightsville and Craig's Creek had that was different from the spring because of those training opportunities that we've had. And our teachers, just like anything, the more you practice your craft, the better you're going to be. And so that's kind of where, I think that's kind of where we're at. And we'll get better, and we'll keep working hard at it.
No, go ahead.
Two quick things. One is deep appreciation for everybody tonight. And I think we're all unanimous in our care for the students and staff. And great job by the administration and everybody. So thanks for all you do. Really, I see it coming out in everything. Second thing is, on a side note, Dallastown is working with OSS to give their teachers some testing and results back in 24 hours. So might be worth a phone call, Dr. Becker or Dr. Mancuso, to give them a buzz. They got something cool going on with OSS that just supports the teaching staff to be able to get turnaround and COVID testing. I don't know what that looks like, just and might be worth a phone call to give the superintendent. That's it.
Okay, any other final board comments? Okay, we've reached the point of the agenda for final patron comments.
I do want to reiterate how appreciative we are. As friends that we have that are teachers, they're doing a marvelous job. I think at this point in time, what we're asking is just to fine-tune some things. And that's really what we're fine-tune some things, see what's working and what's not working. With that, and one clarification that I did want to make, Dr. Mancuso, you had said that in middle school, if you're quarantined, you're going to the remote learning. That's not the case.
No, I said there were some students that if they would switch, not on that team and switch over, that causes the problem, and I know that's not happening.
Yeah, that was not my
Right, I understand that, and I was saying that's one of the challenges to the quarantine process.
So right now, her day looks like she does not have to log in for absentee or anything. She only has one Google Meet out of 4 classes. So she gets all of her instruction online with a landing page, and then her science teacher does have a Google Meet.
And Mrs. Bowsman, to your point, that is one of the things that we are working to figure out. You know, with the prior to these past 2 weeks, we haven't seen the high numbers of quarantine. Now we are, and that's where we're starting to have to figure out, to your point, some of the new details that are associated with remote learning and students quarantining when they weren't expecting that.
Yeah, and that, like, my daughter's a planner. She likes being planned. So oddly enough, my husband and I do public relations for school district. And they have cameras in every classroom. Their teachers come in and a camera is on them and a camera is on their smart board. So they're not missing anything. It's like if they were logged on. So let me read you what my husband had said. And he'll go into it. All right, I'd like to address what some, if not many, overlook. Eligibility is much more important than most administrators and teachers make it out to be. Excuse me. To most, playing extracurricular activities is something these kids do for fun. To serious student athletes, such as my son Austin, a sophomore, it's the only way of life. He is hopeful and works hard to attain a scholarship as he moves on to college. Sports to him is a way of keeping sanity in his life. Without the activity and structure sports provide, Austin would for sure lose track of the importance of working for good grades. Depression would quickly set in and could ultimately cause him to diverge from the path he's worked hard to stay on. I've referred to what my wife has already stated, and specifically to a teacher entering zeros, causing the student to be ineligible, even though the student could not control the circumstances. If a student is forced to stay home, no grade should be entered until that student has had a fair opportunity to complete the work. I don't want to be repetitive to what has already been stated. However, I'd like to make it known that once a kid is sent to remote learning, there is absolutely no structure or instruction for that kid beginning the next day. Plans and programs need to be put in place so when a student gets sent home, they know exactly what tomorrow brings, the next day, and the next week look like. Leaving this to individual teachers is not the resolution. Teachers also need to have structure given to them in order for all to be on the same page. My last thought, we know several other school districts have cameras in every room. If a student is not there on a certain day, they simply log into that class and follow along virtually in real time. Eastern is not doing that we know. Personally, I believe teachers are necessary personnel, the same as the cashiers, workers in grocery stores, convenience stores, and those deemed necessary to survive. Students should be kept open no matter what and not allowed to close just because the staff doesn't want to come to work. The only losers in this scenario are our kids. Continuing education to me is a life-sustaining resource, and without it, this generation is sure to be on the losing end. So, again, we have the most appreciation. We just want more of a fine-tuned adjustment. Is it possible to get cameras in every classroom? Right now, I was looking at one of Austin's algebra class, and I'm not picking on her. She's a lovely lady, and I do appreciate every effort that she gives. And you know these are trying, but she's, as she's talking, so she's on a Google Meet. You're looking at, not even her, you're looking at her sideways of the classroom. So if she's talking and she's moving, you're not going to see her. You don't see her lips. And the people that she's talking to, you don't understand. So if a student is talking, you can't hear them ask any questions. Now, what you do see is if she has sheets on, like math problems and such, and she writes them down, you do see that. But therein lies the misinterpretation of what steps need to be. If someone's asking questions, the person on the other line of the remote learning is not getting the question, and they're not getting the answer. So
I think, and Dr. Mancuso, you can answer this, I think we're hoping, you said coming soon by the third marking period, correct?
At the high school level, yes.
Okay. We got a grant or something. Right?
And one of the things, Mrs. Bausman, back in August was one of the presentations that we did for our board about what the challenges that you just spoke of to live streaming lessons while the teacher is instructing. It becomes difficult. We have been working with Mr. DiPiano with the technology department, and we have some interactive TVs that now have a software that we believe is going to allow our students who are home and who are in class that they would be able to get a QR code or log in, and they would see the teacher's screen. And hopefully we're looking to get some better laptops, because we've also just received additional money that I haven't even told the board about yet from York County commissioners through their CARES Act money that they had left over that they shared with us. So we're looking hopefully to expend some of those funds to get more high-powered laptops for our high school teachers and able to do that. So we've just been waiting for some software opportunities to come out that will allow us to be better instructionally with that.
Sounds good. Thanks so much. Appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, we are going to have an executive session after the meeting to discuss the teacher contract negotiations. But right now we need a motion and a second to adjourn. Okay. Meeting adjourned. Mark and Jim, you guys can take